We are now live.
Thank you. All right, so I call to order the Quality of Life Committee meeting. It is August 7th, 2024 and 5:02. Could I get a roll call, please? Take your time.
Counselor Castro,
Presente.
Counselor Chavez,
Here.
Michael Garcia,
Present.
Counselor Parker,
Here.
Counselor Tassett, Madam Chair is excused.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Next is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes from staff?
No changes.
Can I have a motion, please?
Move to approve. Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Could I get, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. Next is approval of the consent, and we do have some items pulled, so I'm gonna turn it over, or I think Counselor Castro pulled item. All right, Counselor Garcia, do you have the items that you pulled?
Yes, and so I would like to pull items P as in Paul, X as in Xavier, A, B, and A, H. And those are staff members would be Randy, Maria, Chief Joy, and Deputy Director Lotero.
I think we have all that stuff here, correct? All right, looks like we do. Perfect. So, could I get a motion on the consent agenda as amended?
As amended. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Could I get a roll call vote, please?
C.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. We have no presentations today, so we are going to our first item that was pulled, which is item P. Request for approval of a budget amendment resolution to allocate $750,000 from the general fund available balance to fund contracted security service for the downtown area. And we have Randy Randall here to discuss this, and it was pulled by Counselor Garcia. So Counselor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Randall, for being here as well. First and foremost, can you just give us an overview of what this proposal is for those members of the public that are not aware of this?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Counselor, for the question. This would be to fund a 6-month effort to increase the security presence in the historic district through the use of private security.
Okay. And so this is solely for the downtown area, no any place anywhere else in the city?
Madam Chair, Counselor, that is correct.
Okay. I guess, I don't know, Madam Chair, if we could ask, I know I got maybe a question for Chief Joy. I don't know if he can answer it. It's not his item, but this falls into his line of work, given.
Looks like Chief Joy is more than willing to come try to answer that question.
Okay. Thank you, Chief Joy. So my question is more so revolving around why do we need to hire security guards to protect downtown when members of the public might believe that that is the job of the police force?
Sure. Madam Chair and Counselor, there's a number of things involved in what we do and how we do it. The officers that we have at any given time are subject to calls for service throughout the city. I think with Mr. Randall's proposing and with this private security is they are a dedicated element only to being a preventative and deterrent measure for the downtown and direct vicinity of the area, which is, it does, not to say, I don't want to use the word increased presence for us or assist with staffing, but it does help our resources if we know that there is already that deterrent element. They are more able to call incidents in real time. They're trained more so than the average civilian, getting details, being a good witness for us. And so there are a number of reasons why this is again, to use I don't have a better word for it, as a force multiplier, to also assist us out in the field and the officers who are out there doing what they're doing.
Gotcha. Thank you, Chief Joe. And I definitely understand the sentiment of having kind of more eyes and ears on the ground. But it leads me to the question of, do we not have any dedicated officers downtown? I know historically growing up, those, we've told stories in the past of former Officer Cecil Senna, who was a force downtown. And I think it, just because Cecil had that, not only the kind of wherewithal of knowing all the vendors, all the merchants, all the people that went downtown, but it also helped to deter activity. So do we not have any dedicated officers downtown?
So I also long for the days of Cecil. He was here when I started. He was a great officer, and the work that he did was important. And I know the people in the plaza still miss him. That was frankly a simpler time, and Santa Fe was a smaller place, and our population was smaller. Our calls for service were smaller. That was a luxury that we don't have anymore right now. The city has expanded. Our calls for service have grown significantly. And the closest thing that we have to being able to dedicate a unit to any one area is the bike team. Our bike team is currently kind of splitting the difference between the Cerritos and Harrison Road area and the plaza. So that's actually an operation ongoing currently, but they're my little, I don't have a better word for them other than my Swiss Army knife to kind of go after individual hotspots. So their hub is the downtown area. Their area of preference is downtown, but I can't keep them there all the time.
Understandable. And I think that's where I definitely would like to explore, if it's not an officer, maybe public safety aide could be downtown, dedicated, deployed downtown. I know we just invested a great amount of money in creating a police hub station. Right across the hall from here in City Hall. And one of the selling points for us was that we were going to have presence downtown. And from your explanation, it seems, or I'm getting the impression that we just are stretched thin, where we can't allow for that. And I think that's where I would like for us to begin to explore other options of internal capacity. As I mentioned, whether it be a public safety aide, just because having to provide security services solely for the downtown area at a tune of $750,000 for 6 months is not an easy pill to swallow for me. So I think we need to begin to look at how we can begin to expand the capacity of some of the safety presence in our community. And as I've requested in the past, that we begin to look at expanding the public safety aid program and get those folks doing more than just responding to car accidents, and maybe looking at training them in other responsive measures that would help you and your team out to allow you for your capacity to expand.
So, Counselor, we've already done that, and we utilize them. We have expanded their role. We have PSAs assigned to patrol and the bike team and traffic, and they do act as they'll take after the fact reports where there aren't suspects nearby or looming. They don't just take crashes or do traffic direction anymore. We've absorbed them into our general staffing to help with calls for service. And that was something we started, I believe, near the end of 2020, maybe 2021. And that was a need-based decision. Just to handle the very high volume of calls that we were dealing with, and to try to alleviate some of the pressure for the officers. So we put them through a training program on how to take reports that we take. And it's been successful so far. But we do that.
Okay, so I guess the follow-up to that is the capacity stretched with public safety aides now? Because if that's the case, I would highly recommend or request that when budgeting time comes around, there's the request for more resources to hire more of these officers. Because again, getting back to relying on these private security contracts, it's not a sustainable practice for the city of Santa Fe. It's not the look I want for our city, saying we have to now rely on private security contracts. So thank you, Chief Joy. I really appreciate the clarification. The last question I have, Randy, is in regards.
Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Is more around the area identified for this particular contract. I definitely understand the need based off your request because you're tourism, right? And but I would argue that tourism does not end in the downtown area. You've got hotels up and down the Cerrillos Road corridor. Or visitors should not have to lay their head downtown to feel safe. They should be able to lay their head at any of the hotels up and down Cerrillos Road to know that these potential security services are also going to be working to keep them safe. So can we work in this contract to provide the services outside of the downtown area?
Madam Chair, Counselor, I really appreciate that question, and I share that concern about our visitors that find Cerrillos Road as their home. We actually have more rooms on Cerrillos Road than we do hotel rooms downtown. When you add in the short-term rentals, it reverses that, of course. But there's 2,500 rooms on Cerrillos Road that I'm equally concerned about. I think there were a couple of issues that came into at least my thinking when I proposed this. One was the fact that I believe they've tried some private security on Cerrillos Road in the past, and it was found to be non-effective, as opposed to private security that has occurred in some of the downtown areas. The rail yard has had private security for 3 years now, and it has proven very effective in reducing the number of issues that were coming to play in that area. Another example was Midtown, where there were quite a few issues happening in that area when it was relatively unprotected. It now has 24/7 security for about 5 years, and a lot of the issues there have been reduced. So the fact that private security was successful in those two venues, but when it was tried for Cerrillos Road, it was not able to be effective. The hope is, and I have discussed this with Sam Burnett, who's run some of the other security, all the rest of the private security for the city, that by having increased private security in the historic district, as well as the maintained private security at the rail yard and Midtown, would actually take some of the pressure on the police force from that area and allow them to give a little increased focus to the Cerrillos Road area. Since there is some, what did he say? Some force multiplier, if you will, in those areas. So that was the thinking. The amount of budget that was available, I'm afraid if it went to Cerrillos Road as well as the historic district in the 750 for 6 months, it would spread it too thin. Right now, the current staffing, if we're able to get to it through Condor, and they are running behind in their build-up plan. They have not been able to bring a sufficient number of officers in, but we would actually have two, depending on the shift, there'd be 3 shifts per day. Depending on the shift, we'd probably have 2 foot officers and 1 officer in a vehicle for 16 hours, and then just 1 officer. perhaps even the overnight, we haven't quite determined it would only be in a vehicle to make it so that they could spread and cover a larger area. But to extend that out to Cerrillos, I'm afraid would reduce the visual impact we're trying to create through the added security in the downtown. But if additional resources could be found, and if Condor or a second security company, if they're having trouble with the staffing, could be used, and we're finding it to be effective in the historic district, I certainly would support trying to expand this concept if it's working and give Cerrillos another try with it. But I am hopeful that by having this force multiplier in effect in these other 3 locations, that Cerrillos will be able to get a bit more of our police presence, which I really think, because of the intensity of the issues in those areas, I think it really needs the police, not the private security.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Randall. And regarding availability of resources, I mean, that's what we're here to talk about throughout this whole $38 million proposal that's in front of us. But in addition to that, there is, and I haven't been able to put a full figure on it yet, but I know it's in the millions of dollars of unanticipated GRT that the city has received over fiscal year 23. And so that is an option. I would highly encourage you to look at that, because we have the responsibility as a government to provide these type of security services for all residents of Santa Fe. And, you know, unfortunately, this is giving me the impression that we're dedicating a big chunk of security services solely towards the downtown users, which is by far the vast majority of not the residents of the city of Santa Fe. And I have a problem with that.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I would certainly support trying to expand this if there's a way to do it, if we can find resources. And I think through extra GRT, we should look at that. I think as GRT goes up and thrives, I think lodgers tax also continues to thrive. And I think between increased GRT, increased lodgers tax, if we see it, and even some lodgers tax balances, if we're finding this program to be successful, I think I would be 100% behind trying to expand it, even with the past failure that it had on Cerrillos. It may not have been given enough resource. It may not have been given, may have been the wrong company, may have been, and I think working in conjunction with the police force, particularly if we're talking about Cerrillos Road, having a very close synergism between any private security and the police would be critical. And I'm not sure that was the case again when it was tried and was unsuccessful.
Gotcha. And just a quick follow-up in regards to previous services. Were we able to establish if there was previous, because I thought we had previously allocated a contract for security services downtown. And that's why it was a bit surprising to me that we're adding more. So were we able to confirm if that was a contract we had issued in the past or not?
Madam Chair, Councilor, I did reach out to Sam, and he said right after the issue with the obelisk, private security was brought in 24/7, one security person dedicated to the plaza only, not the historic district, plaza only. And it occurred for 1 year.
Okay.
It was a level 3 security. It occurred for 1 year. History shows there were no additional issues. Trouble with security, you can't tell what would have happened had it not been there, but it would be deemed to be successful.
Right. And just, I guess, in that same vein, the last question I have, will there be a kind of report out to us in regards to this 6-month contract? What findings we have, any recommendations from the service, et cetera?
Madam Chair, Councilor, definitely. I meet with the security company on a weekly basis as we're getting this started. We're starting with a fairly even schedule, as I suggested. I think it will, as they are able to determine different times of day where issues seem to be a little more prevalent, as they're able to determine specific hotspots within the area that they're covering, the schedule be adjusted. I plan to have a mid-term really wrap-up report after 3 months to determine our success. And it may actually go a little bit beyond 3 months if the period of time they're taking to build the staff will require a little longer. We are funding this initial phase prior to the approval of the $750,000 from lodgers tax just because I didn't want to wait until the whole summer season was behind us to get it started. Because if we don't get it started, it'll never get up to speed. And it's taking a good 30 to 45 days to get it up to what I hope will be a proper staffing level of a total of 12 officers under the contract.
Well, that's all.
So I
the
expect
questions
a mid-time report. After about 3 months, I think we'll be able to give you a good report back, sir.
Perfect. Thank you. I really appreciate that. With that, no other questions, Madam
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Castro.
Yes, thank you so much, Director Randall. I was gonna possibly give you a little bit of insight on why the security company didn't work on Cerritos Road, but it sounds like you have all the answers already. A lot of the reasons that community members were concerned were also spoken about at a meeting with Cerritos Road businesses most recently. And one of the biggest questions they had was, why are these security teams not being allocated for us? My initial understanding and why I was a little bit comfortable with these security teams downtown was that they were going to be funded through lodgers tax. And so I would be open to some sort of middle ground where we could not just focus on the historic downtown area and maybe partner with lodgers tax to expand those resources for the rest of the city, if you would be open.
Well, Madam Chair, Counselor, definitely I am. But this funding, just to be clear, the $750,000 is not from lodgers tax. It's from the one-time gross receipts tax.
I apologize. Yes. So in saying that we could maybe allocate some GRT or some gross receipts tax and partner with the lodgers tax to increase the funding to possibly work on all areas of the city.
Madam Chair, Council, I'd certainly be open to that possibility. And but my biggest concern is the security company's ability to provide the staffing level that this is really going to require. Because if we were to expand into Cerritos Road and then possibly out into Airport Road area a little bit, it would be more mobile than foot for sure. And again, I'd want to make sure to work with Chief Joy to make sure that there was a really strong relationship between the efforts, so that we're not just spending money for the appearance of success. I'd really want to ensure that we have a good chance of success.
I completely agree. And I think we have a 6-month meeting coming up for Pete's Place. And that might be a good place to sort of get some input from folks to see what they didn't like, what they would like to see, and let them know that we're not forgetting about them, but we're just doing a pilot program initially.
All right, thank you. And I do, I have some concerns like about expansion with private security because their turnover rate is very high. I think we have specific needs in certain areas in our city, evolving needs in certain areas of our city, and we'd have to be incredibly picky about what company we'd partner with. They have a huge turnover rate. They have a lot of inconsistencies, and I believe the city has ran into some issues with security companies along the way for that exact reason. They're not familiar faces. They're not necessarily safe for certain community members, especially community members that have high need. So if there is an expansion ever in discussion, I would be very cautious that we're looking more so in expanding like safety aids in our public safety department rather than expanding private security companies where we don't have control over their hiring. We don't have control over some of their internal difficulties. Unfortunately, we just have to face the results of what those are. So I just wanted to add that input in there. And Councillor Faulkner.
Madam Chair, just to respond to that, I 100% agree. And this is not something that I'm excited about doing. I felt that it needed to be a stopgap to try to assist with the problem that we have. But I'd love to have it not be necessary. And I'm already working with my second supervisor within the first 40 days of the contract. So I totally agree on the turnover issue. It is not an easy situation, and it's not an easy solution, and it's not a permanent solution. It's a stopgap.
And unfortunately, they're private companies just trying to get by and do best on their own as well. It's just a very difficult situation or the reality of our workforce in general. Like we're all facing it, government agencies, private agencies. It's just a difficult time. But I'm sorry, Counselor Faulkner, and I'm sorry if I skipped you.
That's okay, Madam Chair. So just to recap, how many years have we been paying for this level of?
Says my speaker is not working.
If you have,
Someone's
the Zoom
speaker,
open
can
or
we
you have the
mute?
You have a
Teams
hot
open,
mic.
It's
All right, let me
sealed to the
just-
speaker.
Okay,
I think we're good. Thank you, Marcella. All right, sorry, Counselor Faulkner.
So just to recap, how many years have we been funding this program?
Madam Chair, Counselor, this is a brand new program.
Okay,
This has not had any prior funding. This particular effort in the downtown area, with the exception of, in response to Counselor Garcia, there was a 1-year program with one officer 24/7 right after the obelisk issue, but I was not involved in that. This is a new program.
okay, so is there an intent for this to be a reoccurring cost to the city?
Madam Chair, Counselor, if it has success, I truly hope it will be a recurring cost. And I would look for, as was suggested, some combination of the use of both lodger's tax and gross receipts tax, because this benefits both the tourism side of our city and the residential side of our city.
So, and this is not an accusatory question. This is like general inquiry. If we have these funds available, would we not use them to build a more robust police force?
Madam Chair, Counselor, that would clearly be more of a question for the police chief. We have current vacancy, so I'm not sure if we increase the number of positions that we'd be able to succeed with that. Hopefully through what was suggested with the use of safety aids and perhaps some personnel that require less robust training, we'll be able to resolve that issue.
And just for clarification, Counselor Faulkner, these funds are coming out of the one-time spending, which means it can't be reoccurring for salaries. We would all want all of this to go to salaries, or I guess I would speak for myself, but I imagine we all would. Unfortunately, it is not allowed with this funding source.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair.
Right, thank you, Director. Thank you, Chief Joy. Can I get a motion, please?
Move to approve.
Second,
I have a motion and a second. Could I get a roll call vote?
Counselor Faulkner,
yes.
Counselor Castro,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Chair Chaffetz.
Yes. Thank you. Moving on to our next item pooled, it's item X, request for approval of a budget amendment resolution to allocate $812,325 from the half GRT increment for infrastructure fund available balance to fund the purchase and installation of pallet shelters and hygiene and office units. And we have Director Tucker here, and this was pulled by Counselor Garcia. So Counselor, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Director Sanchez Tucker. First question, how many units do we currently have unused? I know we have 10 allocated through the pilot program.
Correct. I think we have 39 unused.
39 unused, okay. And given we've got 39 unused, why are we planning to purchase more and how many more?
29, I'm sorry.
Okay,
I can't do math apparently. Sorry about that.
no, perfectly fine. 29 for the record.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Counselor Garcia for the question. This purchase would allow us to expand the number of units we have. We have a contract to purchase 100 units. And this would also allow us to purchase 2 hygiene units and 1 office unit. As you know, our first small pilot program is very successful. We have to take a multi-pronged approach to solving homelessness in Santa Fe. And this will allow us to look at special populations, serving special populations. The pallet shelters provide trauma-informed housing for folks that come with wraparound services. And so it's really been a positive way to move people into more permanent housing and to treatment or other services that they might need. And so this, we feel this model is working and that we can deploy other sites and that serves specific populations such as maybe seniors or veterans or folks who may need more specialized services. And so this is, we want to purchase these units so that we can continue with a plan. Director Julie Sanchez is working on an RFQ for a public-private partnership to expand sites. And so this is something that is a necessity for our current situation with homelessness in Santa Fe.
Okay. And how many more, 29 we have unused right now. How many more are planned to be purchased through this proposal?
This proposal would let's see. So I think that's 50. And then 2 hygiene units and 1 office unit. is
So
what's
in
proposed.
an additional 50,
Mm.
which would bring us to 89. Oh yeah, 79. Sorry, I've still had 39.
And
And
the
then
units,
the 2
sorry.
hygiene units.
2 hygiene units and 1 office unit. The models have changed since we've initially purchased these, so the prices have gone up, but they're a little bit easier to deploy and a little bit more efficient. So the costs have changed slightly since when we originally purchased the units.
Okay, and you mentioned an RFQ going out. Do you know when that is planned to be issued?
I hope, I don't have the date. I was hoping Director Sanchez would call me, but she's currently working on that. So I think very soon is what we would like to have that as soon as it's been approved by legal and reviewed and ready to go.
So I guess my question to that is, wouldn't it be more prudent of us to wait and see what the RFQ response is versus us investing in more of these pallet shelters? I know that the first RFQ only brought forth 1 application. To invest in nearly double what we had invested in last time. I want to make sure that we're moving forward appropriately, because the lens I'm looking at this in right now is, could these resources be used in a more efficient manner, more quicker later? Because as we heard in the meeting on Monday, we've got nearly $50 million in deferred maintenance in the city. Could that be used elsewhere? And then, as I mentioned, we've got unanticipated GRT resources that can be used to cover this. So that's the trouble I'm having with approving this when we haven't even seen the demand yet. We're anticipating a demand, unless you can share with me that we have heard from interested stakeholders that we know we're going to get an additional 79 shelters deployed, because I'm would be supportive of that, in the sense that's potentially another 150 individuals that have housing, but we don't have the RFQ response rate yet. So
Thank you, Madam Chair and Councilor Garcia. That is a great point. This is part of our planning process. And so we, as you know, there are going to be some upcoming changes with, or there are things on the forefront with bringing in service providers and RFQs. And so I think by having different locations where we can provide more service for folks, it will assist us with getting more people into more permanent housing. And so this is part of the planning, is to be able to purchase these shelters and then be able to deploy as needed when we have the RFQ. And so I think it's part of, the more prudent plan to make sure that we have shelters in place. And also, these are a good investment. Should we have an emergency, we can always deploy these for a natural disaster or some kind of emergency shelter. So they are a good asset for the city to have on hand. But I imagine that we will work to try to provide as many unhoused folks with shelter as we can.
Thank you, Director Sanchez Tucker, but I don't recall the previous RFQ being limited to an area. It was anybody in the city could have applied. And so I do, again, have some concern unless there's been expressed interest from entities that said, we're willing to host this, and I'd like to learn who those potentially entities are, because it helps us to justify the expenditure. In regards to the comment of deploying them for natural disasters, that's a bit challenging, because I inquired if we could deploy the unused shelters, whether it be to Las Vegas or to Ruidoso during their recent natural disasters, and I was told no. So unless the disaster is here, it's feasible, but yeah, sure.
Just want to ask a clarifying question because this, we've been discussing this for a while now. So our contract is that we're eventually going to purchase up to 100 pellet homes, right? So what we're going to be having in our plan when funds are available is just increasing those increments until we get to 100. I just want to clarify. So part of the purchase is not necessarily us being ready for them in regards to having a place to, provide the services and the land, but it's us upholding our part of the contract in regards to this purchase, correct? I just wanted to clarify, because that's what my understanding is, that's part of the purpose as well. But if you could just clarify that.
And just an additional clarification to add on top of that, because when we allocated the resources a couple years ago, it was a couple $1 million allocation for it. I don't recall us, and maybe this is where my clarification comes in, I don't recall us being committed to buying 100. It was saying we are allocating these couple millions of dollars to potentially purchase up to. So I guess that was a later question I have is, didn't we already allocate the money to purchase these? And because it's the question was, where did that money go that we allocated to purchase the up to 100? So I'll ask her to the clarifying questions for her, and then I've got the follow-up ones I'll reiterate to you in a moment.
So a lot of clarifying for us both, if you don't mind, Director.
So thank you, Madam Chair and Councilor Garcia. I may need to look into these questions and speak with Director Sanchez. But yes, I think you're right. We never said that we would purchase 100. What I'm wondering about is when the contract expires, and that may be the reason why we also need to that RF. I forgot how the procurement went on that one, but the contract may expire and we need to purchase these. But we're also looking into planning. We've been working with a consultant, Dr. Van Voorhees, who is helping us map out a plan for how we are going to solve homelessness in Santa Fe. And so ensuring that we have a plan in place that we can deploy as needed, and then also looking at potential for public sites as well.
Okay. And then the question I had that was kind of after was when we initially allocated the resources for these, I thought we had allocated a couple $1 million for the potential purchase of up to X amount. And so I think that's my question is why, if we've already allocated from the existing or at that time budget, why are we coming back to reallocate more money for money that we had approved in the past? And maybe that's a finance question.
I think that might be actually city attorney question, because it was within the contract and I think it was spending not to exceed that amount. It wasn't an allocation because we were concerned about that amount of money being available. And I remember that being a clarifying discussion that that was kind of like the cap of spending, but that all purchases would be coming through for approval when spending towards those the pellet housing. So I think it was just like a cap on the contract, but having some clarification on the contract itself, I think will help help us. I've been talking a lot all day, guys. Just say it was Jumpstart. I probably spoke to 40 parents and 70 students, so I apologize. I'm doing the best I can here. But if we could have maybe, oh, thank you for saving me.
Good evening, counselors. So my recollection on the pallet shelters is that we did a not to exceed contract to purchase up to 100 units. We purchased the original 25 units using ARPA funds, and we didn't have funding for the additional 75, which is the reason why we're coming back to request a budget adjustment. So there is capacity available on that contract, but we didn't commit to purchasing the full 100 units. We just did 25 using ARPA funds.
Gotcha. Thank you, Director Oster. Really appreciate you saving the day on that one.
Thank you.
So I guess if we can get some clarification before governing body, because this is already passed the committee, it's going to go to governing body for potential approval. If we can get clarification around why we want to, why we feel encouraged to invest to purchase an additional 75, what makes us confident about that? I'd feel more comfortable approving the resources, given we've got tens of millions of dollars in deferred maintenance, as you know. I mean,
Thank
so
you, Madam Chair and Councilor Garcia. Yes, I will get that clarifying information. To my knowledge, it's because we're going to deploy these and we're going to serve homeless people and get them wraparound services so that we can ensure that they get the housing eventually into housing. So I will find out a little bit more information about the contract and follow up with you on that. Thank you.
sure, absolutely. No other questions. Thank you, Director Sanchez Tucker.
Thank you, Counselor. And I think the next stop for this is finance, correct? Do I have my days right at least?
So it goes to
So maybe having some clarification on all of that would be helpful for that, just so that some questions are answered prior to governing body. Okay, any other questions on this item? Counselor Faulkner?
So I would like to commend staff on being proactive on this issue. One of the things that I think we struggle with as a state and as a city is we tend to be reactive. And that always puts us in a position that we're on the defensive on a large range of issues that are critical issues to the health and safety of our community. So on my part, I appreciate that you're being proactive about this because we cannot predict the future, and the need for some of these, some of this equipment is absolutely there. And so getting out ahead of it is probably one of the only ways that we're going to be able to manage some of these more critical issues. So I greatly appreciate you being proactive on this.
Thank you, Counselor Faulkner. Okay, do we have a motion for this item?
Move to approve.
Second,
All right, I have a motion and a second. Could I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilor Faulkner,
yes.
Councilor Castro,
See.
Sir Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Chair Chavez.
Yes. All right, thank you. I don't know if anyone would like to amend, if we can do this, and I'm not a pro, the consent agenda, so we have item AB last. Because AB is going to be a long discussion. Would we have a motion to do that? To hear, it would be to hear item AH, and then move to AB.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and multiple seconds. Could I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilor Faulkner,
Yes.
Sir Castro,
Yes.
Sir Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Chavez.
Yes. Okay, so that we move to AH. It is consideration of bill number 2024-9, adoption of an ordinance number 2024 to be determined, a bill amending SFCC 1987, section 11-8, to allow the city of Santa Fe to obtain an investment advisory service contractually for the investment of public funds. And we have Director Latero here and Counselor Garcia. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, Director Lotero. How are you? Just two quick questions for you. Do we not have anybody on staff that oversees an investment portfolio for the city of Santa Fe?
Madam Chair, Counselor Garcia, we have in the past, and perhaps, I know you know Brad Lutch, who is our investment. He oversaw our investments. With his departure, we decided that perhaps it would be better use of our resources to contract it out. It'll cost us substantially less money. It seems to be the direction that most other municipalities have gone on. I spent a lot of time talking to people when I was at the GFOA conference. It just, you have to pay a position like that. It's a high level position. So it just made more sense to us to be able to contract it out. And that being said, we had to do the ordinance change to allow us to do that.
Gotcha. Thank you. Just out of curiosity, do we have a ballpark of what we anticipate such a service to cost the city?
Madam Chair, Counselor Garcia, it's usually based on a percentage. And we are still in the process of determining how much we want to invest in this manner. We have money in already in Principal Group. We have some about 70 to 80 million sitting in the local government investment pool. And we have some cash at Wells Fargo. So we have to make a determination as to how much we're considering investing with this, whoever succeeds with our RFQ, and then we will, I'll be able to get back to you and tell you exactly what that number is, actually.
Okay, thank you. And you threw out some figures that was kind of in my line of my next question, which was how much does the city actually have to invest?
That determination is going to be made. We have money sitting in different places at the moment. We will most likely leave that at least in the short term where it is, except for local government investment pool. We may pull some of that out and invest with whoever wins the award. But like I said, I'll be happy to give you those numbers when the decision has been made.
Sure. But I know you said there's different locations, pots of money. What is the grand total of all of these resources? Whether it's the 70, 80 million you mentioned, the money at Wells Fargo Bank, other locations. I mean, what is the total amount of money that the city has to invest?
So as our budget officer just told me, he got the investment schedule from Clarence Fairley recently, and he said it's somewhere around 395 million.
Okay.
Bear in mind, that's from multiple sources. That's not all general fund or
Yeah,
anything.
understandable. And should the city want to only invest 300 million, what happens to the other 95 million? Is that something that the city can utilize towards some of our deferred maintenance?
The money, potential money we're going to invest is not money we want to spend, right? The money we want to invest is from multiple sources. The money I quoted you from Principal Group, about half of that belongs to BDD. So we have about between 70 and 80 million sitting at local government investment pool. So if we need it, we can pull it out. It's very liquid. That's why we have it sitting there at the moment.
Gotcha.
But it's not, it's different than when we talk about the cash balances that have accumulated, the unanticipated GRT. These are all monies that we spend, correct? This money we invest is for various things, and I can kind of give you a briefing on that at another time, but it's not money that we are looking to put into a budget anywhere at the moment.
Gotcha. No, I definitely would love to continue the conversation just because we keep circling back to whether it's the $50 million in deferred maintenance, the probably tens of millions of dollars more of folks needing special projects done, or the hundreds of millions of dollars needed for our infrastructure needs. When, we've got this $395 million that we're looking at investing through a potentially different source now with this proposal. I'm always looking at how we can begin to address the needs of our community right now. And sure, Andy, go ahead.
Andy, why don't you just come and join our conversation here?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia. Keep in mind, this is not money apart from the budget. This is money that is the budget. This is things like, for example, when we issued bonds for capital projects, that money sits there until we spend it. The vast majority of this money that you're talking about is not, free, do what you want with money. It's money that has already been committed. For example, there is a substantial amount of money, as we discussed before, sitting in the bank for ARPA projects that has not been spent out. There's a substantial amount of money, for example, sitting in housing, for commitments that have been made but have not yet been paid out. So what we're talking about, this is not a separate pot of money. This is the pot of the money that keeps the lights on, that churns through the government day to day. It may go up, it may go down based on the timing of things like tax receipts, payroll, things like that. But only the amount that we talk about when we talk about reserves in the general fund or anything else, that's still the only money that of all this that we have to play with. All the rest of this is money that happens to be liquid right now, but is committed.
Gotcha.
And until that commitment's paid out, we want to earn interest on it.
And I guess my follow-up to that is I know some funds like the ARPA funds where, because federal funds, you can't gain interest on. It's illegal. So how much of that money actually could be invested out of this 395 million, given we've talked about other sources where it's against the law to put it in a money investment account?
So, Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, the 395 million covers all the city funds, correct? Like I said, the 200 million we talked about initially, BDD got a fairly significant settlement. So 75 million of that's sitting at Principal Group of the 200 is that settlement. And they, believe me, already have plans for that. So it's utilities money. It's, if we have too much cash sitting in Wells Fargo, we'll put some over in the local government investment pool to, create some returns for the city. As Andy spoke to, what we fund the city on is our revenues and grants and all of these other funding sources, but this isn't monies that is liquid that we can just go out and spend.
Right, understandable. And maybe if we can continue the conversation offline, because out of all of that grand pot of money, 395, I'm interested in how much actually slices out to be able to be allocated into an investment portfolio. Then I'm, got follow-up interest questions of like, how liquid is it in the instance we need to liquidate that money, like during a pandemic, because I don't want us to be in a situation where, sure, it's great to accrue the interest, but could that money be invested in another mechanism, such as investing in the infrastructure and not accruing? I don't even know the return rates. So I think that those are questions I have. So I
If
think-
we're investing in infrastructure and then we're spending money.
right. And
But-
it is. I definitely understand that, but I
There's a
think,
reason that we, primarily the 30 million that we say that's our reserve, because now we're more adhering to the GFOA recommendations rather than DFA, which is very minimal.
gotcha.
That money would sit, we really don't have any interest in investing that money because we need it to be liquid. We have a fire in Santa Fe, or we have another bridge or whatever, we need to be able to access that money. And we can liquidate money at the local government investment pool within 48 hours.
Gotcha. And just to clarify my comment around investing in the infrastructure, as taking my counselor hat off and putting my resident hat on, would I like for the government to invest in paving a road that is direly needed or investing it and getting, you know, a smaller percentage of return, whereas those years we're gaining return, I'm having to swerve through potholes for 4 or 5 years. And I think that's the investment. That's what I was talking about. I understood it. It meant expending the money, but it was meaning investing in an improved infrastructure for our community. So
I think the easiest way to look at it is it's not really money that we can like. And
Gotcha.
spoke to, you know, the
yeah, it's
bond
money that's
proceeds,
there.
it's
That's
already
got to be there,
committed.
but it's a way for us to earn some interest on a money that we've got to have there. So I definitely understand that. And that's why I was asking the questions more so around how much actually needs to be there, how much could actually be invested in another route. So thank you, Director Lotero. I really appreciate you clarifying all of this for me. No other questions, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. Could I get a roll call vote, please?
Counselor Castro.
Sí.
Counselor Michael Garcia.
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner.
Yes.
Chair Chavez.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, so now we are back up to item AB. Request for approval of a budget amendment resolution to allocate $1,107,000 from the HAPGRT increment fund available balance to purchase 2 armored vehicles and an explosive ordnance disposal vehicle for the Santa Fe Police Department. We have Chief Joy here and quite a few of his team members. This was pulled by Counselor Garcia, but I know Counselor Castro also has some questions, so I will turn it over to you, Counselor Garcia, first.
I had one quick follow-up question for you, Chief Joy. And I don't know if any of the sergeants can help with this, just because I was trying to understand the need for the request. And from my understanding is that it would be helpful to have one of these Bearcat units in the front of a facility, home, business, whatever it may be, and then one on a backside location. Am I understanding that correct?
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, that is correct. And there were some questions at the last meeting that I was not equipped to answer. I brought in folks who are better experienced and more knowledgeable in this realm than I am. Sergeant Nick Wood, who's our Special Operations Commander. He's been with the SWAT team since 2008. And our actual SWAT team commander, Sergeant Javier Vigil, who's been with the SWAT team since 2017. There are some questions about, taking fire, which the Bearcat has. We brought some visual aids that might help with explaining the level of work that goes into preparing for approval of these executions for operations. So you guys can see that, and copies of the matrices that go through that are part of the evaluation for each individual incident that has to be considered and evaluated for approval before each time. So we have all that for your.
Yeah, I think the committee would benefit from a presentation, so we'll just kind of turn it over to your team to go over all that, and then we'll follow up with questions.
The sergeant's here.
Madam Chair and councilors, thank you for having me. I'm Sergeant Vigil, the current SWAT commander. I've prepared some of the visual aids to help answer some of the questions you may or may not have.
Are those copies for each one of us?
Sure, I'll pass them out here. In a
Okay.
second. I'm getting some. So this first document that you're going to be seeing is something that's consistent both when our team is activated or what we refer to as callouts, emergency situations where we deem the SWAT team may be necessary to resolve the situation, as well as pre-planned search warrants or arrest warrants, again, where the person in question poses a significant threat to officers and citizens and maybe themselves, to where we have to make an evaluation to determine if the use of the SWAT team, therefore the use of our equipment, such as the Lenco Bearcats in question, are necessary. This document you have in front of you is usually completed by either a patrol officer or a patrol supervisor in the field, or more commonly by one of our detectives or detective sergeants investigating a high violent crime. They'll, for instance, they'll see a situation where they see someone has a high violent crimes history, or perhaps maybe a firearm was used in the commission of the crime in question. Assuming they have legal authority, search warrants, arrest warrants, things of that nature, and they intend to serve those search warrants, arrest warrants, they then contact the SWAT commander, who is me at the current time. They'll fill out that packet, put any necessary information in there. I will have my questions for them, more specifics. And then the next layer of checking over and of authority is our Special Operations Commander, Sergeant Nick Wood here. He then has a discussion with me, looks over the same packet. We go over any questions. It then goes to the Deputy Chief of Operations, Deputy Chief Matt Chaplin. And then ultimately it goes over to the Chief of Police for final approval, Chief Paul Joy. So there are a lot of levels of checks and balances just for that one form there. I know I kind of said a lot, so if you have any questions, please.
Yeah. So what does this result in? Is there some kind of packet that you guys have to put together?
It does. Let me refer. So unfortunately, I can't pass these out. They are still pending active investigations. These are some more of our recent ones from the end of 2023. At the time, I was a detective with the Violent Crimes Unit, so I have intimate knowledge of investigating these crimes firsthand, generating the probable cause for the arrest warrants and the search warrants, and then putting on my SWAT commander hat at the time and preparing all the documentation with the assistance of my team to find the necessity for the use of the department's SWAT team. For search warrants and arrest warrants, it's about a week's worth of work. These are pretty hefty packets. These go through our chain of command, the one I just mentioned. Some members of my team will complete these along with the assistance of the detectives working the case. They'll come to me for review. After my review, again, they go to Special Operations Commander Sergeant Nick Wood, Deputy Chief of Police. All these need to get signatures before we even go and we access our specialized equipment, and before we put our team on notice that they need to go serve the search warrant and arrest warrant. For call outs, emergency situations, say something happens tonight at 3 a.m. I'll get a phone call. I'll request that packet as long as there's time to get that packet. Sometimes things are happening quick. Time may be valuable, but if there's time and if patrol officers have the scene secured and I can get that packet, I'll get that packet, pass it up the chain of command. We will go handle the situation, and then a packet is prepared on the back end of everything we need. So what I'm trying to illustrate here with all this paperwork and showing you these documents and showing you the work that goes into it is the use of our department SWAT team, and the issue we're looking at here are Bearcats, our armored vehicles that give protection to our SWAT officers. There's a lot of levels of checks and balances to determine if they're reasonably necessary to be used. And last year, if my numbers are correct, 17 total operations, I believe 8 search warrants and arrest warrants, and 9 call outs. Don't quote me on that number. It might be flipped, one or the other. But it's not every day. Sometimes it can be back-to-back days. We've had occasions where they're on the same day. We have things that necessitate the SWAT team. But generally speaking, a situation has to arise to a point to where the team is necessarily needed.
Madam Chair. So it isn't like in the TV shows, I mean, just as a layperson, you're not hopping in this thing all the time and like running out there like a military force. There's a lot of thought that goes into when and how you go about using these vehicles and using SWAT, correct?
Correct. So for example, my primary role is a sergeant assigned to the graveyard unit. I have access and keys to the Bearcat. but I cannot make the decision myself to just go run, jump in this vehicle, take it out and start pulling people over, or run down Cerritos Road and do whatever I want. I have to get approval all the way to the top of our chain of command. We need to articulate the use of it using current case law and using our policies and procedures to determine if it's reasonably necessary to take this vehicle out and use it.
I'm just going to give the floor back to Counselor Garcia. And Counselor, with that information, did you have any further questions?
Yeah, I didn't know if that was the end of the chief's information or follow-up to the questions that were on Monday. I'd definitely cede the floor back to Chief Joy.
The sergeant has a few more visual aids as well.
Sure.
But also, more specific, you asked at the last meeting, Counselor Garcia, if, speaking about, other agencies telling us no, right? And I want to make sure not to put this in a manner that's throwing shade at any other agency, because like I said in the other meeting, was they have their own obligations and responsibilities. And I couldn't cite for you off the top of my head instances where they have said no. The sergeants here, both Sergeant Beal and Sergeant Wood, are able to reference incidents recently within the past couple of years in which they've had to tell us no. And I want to make sure that I'm very clear when I say it's not like they just don't want to let us play with their toys or they're just not willing to help. It's because they have their own responsibilities and obligations and simply weren't able to help us.
Sure. And
Just have
on
a
the top of
quick point of clarification. I'm so sorry. Was that because ours was out of commission or because we had 2 incidents?
I can speak on that, Counselor. It really depends on the exact situation we're talking about. I can cite one more recent in my mind, or fairly more recent within the last half year or so. The sheriff's office was dedicating a substantial amount of their resources to the event at the Santuario, as were we, some of ours. We had a SWAT activation around that same time period. I believe it was the night before. We did have our Bearcat operational and in the front of the location. However, the location of the residents that we were looking at, the severity of the crime, we really wanted a second piece of a Bearcat, a second piece of armor, so to speak, that would be capable of stopping the threat that we were anticipating, located on the side of that structure. It would have also given us some vantage into the backyard of that structure as well. So we had made a request for their team, primarily their Bearcat, to come supplement us, and they had to tell us no because they had personnel already planning to attend the event the following day at the Santuario. So that's just an example. They're very short-staffed right now, as is a lot of law enforcement agencies throughout the nation. So a lot of times they do have to tell us no because they simply don't have the staffing to come out and provide it. We've established a very strong working relationship with the sheriff's office. Over the past few months, we've been training with them. We try to at least once every couple of months, just for familiarity and to complement each other with resources when it's feasible and when it can be done. But still, I would estimate, and this is an estimate, I don't have any factual numbers in front of me. I would estimate greater than 50% of the time when we ask for them to come support us or their armor, they have a legit reason why they cannot come. Again, as the chief was saying, not to throw them under the bus or say they are not supportive of us. They're very supportive of us. But sometimes it's not always within their realm of something that they can do at the time.
Okay. And I didn't know, Chief Joy, if you had any other follow-ups to some of the questions and conversation we had during Monday night's committee meeting.
Madam
Sure.
Chair, could I suggest that as we go through this, can we ask questions as they go through their presentation? Or do you want us to wait until the end of the presentation?
I would prefer that we wait and we just, so right now Counselor Garcia has the floor. I think that Chief, you are going to kind of finish answering some of the questions that were presented on Monday. I think it'll just be organized because I already feel like I'm having a hard time following with the jumping around. But I've had a long day. You all know that. It might just be me. But Counselor Garcia, we are going to give you the floor and we're going to allow you to keep it. I told him he's surrounded by women and that's the problem. But go ahead. And Chief Joy.
Chief Joy.
And part of the, at least half the bouncing around is my fault because that's how my brain operates. So I'll apologize as well. There were other questions related to whether or not the Bearcat has taken fire rounds. Again, we cited 2023, and that was my fault because I would just pulled the most recent end of year data to present to you all. But again, These two gentlemen behind me are more experienced in the team, and they were able to confirm that there are at least three instances, I'm sorry, where the Bearcat has taken fire, and he's got some photos that he can share with you from the damage to the Bearcat.
Madam Chair and Councilors, as you get this packet in front of you, we can just, we're not skipping around to different things. We can skip past the first page. That just shows some of the things that need to be repaired or replaced on our current Bearcat. And also the long-range acoustic device. I wanted to point out one of the tools used for it, just in case you need it for any information. If you flip to the next 3 pages, you'll see specified locations where our department's Bearcat has taken bullet impact fire over its lifetime. 2 of those impacts are from believed to be 9mm ammunition, so pistol ammunition, and one is from a 308 caliber bullet, a large hunting round commonly used to hunt big game such as elk. It should also be noted with some of these, our current fleet of units, some of them are equipped with what we call level 3 armor. That'll stop pistol rounds. That'll stop those 9mm rounds. Your pretty much all your rifle rounds. So that 308 round, for example, that struck the Bearcat, it goes right through all of our fleet vehicles. This piece of equipment right here, this Lenco Bearcat that we currently have, and the ones that we are respectfully requesting, are the only pieces of equipment that we will have that can stop rifle rounds.
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, I think as far as Monday's information, I think that might be all of it. I think there might have been a question, someone can stop me if I'm wrong, about use historically. So if there wasn't, I'll give it anyway, and it's at least helpful. I went back to 2019 of end of year, pulling the number of call outs and warrant service operations up to 2023 for use of the SWAT team. In 2019, we had 6 operations between 4 call outs and 2 warrant service operations. In 2020, there were 11 with 6 call outs and 5 warrant service operations. In 2021, there were 10 total with 6 call outs and 4 warrant service operations. In 2022, it went up to 12 with 7 call outs and 5 warrant service operations. And in 2023, so there were 17 in total with 9 call outs and 8 warrant service operations. So going back to 2019, there have been unfortunately more use and more need for it to where we are now in 2024. Again, asking for the 2 units.
I didn't want to cut you off, just wanted to make sure that was all the follow-up from the.
You have one? Yeah. Okay, right on. We're at your disposal, Counselor.
Sure. Since we're talking some of the data, do we have any numbers for 2024 up to this date and time?
I don't know if they have the current up to date, not yet. No, not.
Can we get that before next Wednesday?
I think that would be easy to pull, sure.
I don't sit on finance, so. Yeah, if we can get that before next Wednesday, I'd appreciate that. But my initial question, and the question I got is, if you can help me understand and if I get into tactical operations, please stop me. But just to understand, the front and back, I definitely understand that process. But at any point in time, are individuals outside of these vehicles, or is it these vehicles show up and 100% of the responses in these vehicles? And at any point in time besides that, how many folks remain in the vehicle, I guess, as well?
Counselor, I can speak to that. So our positioning of our armor, our Bearcat, it's, since we only have one, it's typically placed at the front of the location that we're focused on, our focus location, we refer to it, in a front direction towards the residence, so the windows can see towards it, the windshield. The driver stays inside of the vehicle, and then, usually if we have the personnel for it, we will allocate a crisis negotiator to sit there as well. What that negotiator does is using if you were to go look at page 1 of the documents I sent out to you, at the very top of the Bearcat, there's an arrow pointing towards a device called long range acoustic device. Our negotiators use that to communicate with the person inside, typically a suspect, telling them that we are the police, that we have legal authority to be there, search warrants or arrest warrants, and giving them direction of how to end the situation peacefully. And they start to build rapport through that device as well. Typically, those are the only 2 people that are staying inside of the vehicle during that time. Everyone else, all the other SWAT officers, are outside of the vehicle, generally behind the vehicle. So if you were the front door counselor, and if this was our Lenco Bearcat, right, it'd be bigger, obviously. My team, a good majority of my team would be back here. And we're staying behind that hard cover because this is the only thing protecting us from rifle fire. And commonly in these situations, rifle fire is something that we are preparing for. Other members of the team might be somewhere else watching the sides or the rear, which is why having a second piece of armor in the rear gives our personnel that protection they need in the back as well. If I can note one more thing, the only other thing that protects our SWAT officers from rifle fire, they are outfitted with vests, vests that appear larger than what our normal patrol officers wear. The majority of their vests, their sides, their back, their shoulders, everything will only stop pistol rounds. There is a small 10-inch by 12-inch plate that is rated to stop rifle rounds. Aside from that, everything else, including their helmet, it's not protected from rifle rounds. They have to stay behind something with level 4 armor, something that's going to stop rifle fire. Did that answer your question?
It did. And I apologize. I didn't want you to get too much into kind of tactical response, because I know that it helps provide an advantage for a response. So,
Sure.
I guess my only follow-up is there any other equipment besides a Bearcat that can help provide protection for the officers when they're outside of the vehicle? Because that is my utmost priority, is to ensure that you and your team have every single piece of equipment available to keep you safe throughout the entire response, and ensure that you get home safe to your family at the end of the day.
There are a couple other pieces of equipment that can achieve the same thing. One is referred to as a rook. So think of a rook as a kind of like heavy machinery that has a piece in front of it that it can raise up and down, and it has large level 4 protection shields that are, and you have your personnel on that platform that can go up and down. The common use for this piece of equipment is for multi-structural, multi-level structures. So think of like your motels that have 2 or 3 levels. If you have someone up on the 2nd or 3rd level of one of those rooms, your Bearcat at the bottom is at tactical disadvantage because it's down looking up. But if you have this rook, it can be up and down. I don't have knowledge on pricing or anything of the rook. I do know that typically to move those, you also need some way to transport it. You need a large, heavy double axle trailer, a truck to pull it. And we have another piece of equipment that we recently were able to obtain that's going to help us a little more in those situations. It's a taller level 4 shield takes a lot longer to deploy and only covers one person, but it is something that can give our SWAT officers some coverage on those landings or in hallways or things like that. In closing for that question, this is the most practical and in my opinion, the most fiscally responsible piece of equipment to achieve the objective we're trying to achieve, which is keeping our officers safe.
Okay. Thank you, SWAT Commander Vigil. I really appreciate the clarification. Thank you, Chief Joy, for some of the follow-up on the questions that we had on Monday. At this moment, no other questions for me, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor Garcia. Counselor Castro.
Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you so much, Chief and Sergeant, for your presentation. I do have a few questions. How many days a year do you think that our current Bearcat is in use?
Madam Chair, Counselor, your question was for the year, right? How many times per year?
How many days in a year is it in use?
I'd say approximately maybe 30 days a year, rough numbers. We do use it sometimes for some events in relation to the public. We want to educate them. We want them to know that these aren't if they see these vehicles going down Cerrillos Road, that we don't want the public to panic and think that it's you know, military vehicles or anything like that. We want them to know what their use is and what their capabilities are to an extent within reason. So we take them out for that, and then the other, like say last year, 17 of them were operational.
With all due respect, vehicles like this were sort of developed by the military and they are called armored vehicles. This one in particular is for bombs. When was the last time that we used it or had some sort of bomb incident in Santa Fe?
With all due respect, Counselor, this vehicle is not designed for bombs. I come from the background of the United States Marine Corps. What you're referring to is probably the AMRAP or a MAP-B. Those are tailored. They have cutouts, angler, specifically to deal with improvised explosive devices. This vehicle is flat on the bottom. It's designed by a company called Lenco, who specifically manufactures this vehicle for police usage. Your armored vehicles in the military, although they have more of an offensive purpose behind them, they have a large weaponry on top and minesweepers and stuff like that. This vehicle we use purely for defensive purposes and for communication purposes for our crisis negotiation team.
Okay, so we might have some disagreement in our request for
Counselor, I
funds
think you're asking about the EOD response.
because it says yes,
Right. And that's where,
explosive disposal.
I brought Sergeant Byford, who is our EOD commander. He can answer more of that. I do. Let me see. And again, this is from the other night that I pulled for the 2023 numbers for EOD. We had 28 total. So the EOD had 11 for 2023 individual EOD callouts. And they also responded to all of the SWAT callouts because they also operate the robot and they use that to deploy to clear the residences so that the officers aren't going in and engaging. So once they believe a residence is clear, they'll send the robot in first to make initial contact, and that's operated exclusively by our EOD team. They also assisted with 4 special events. I don't think we noted too, they also get requested for whenever the legislature is in town, they're assisting with state police to do SWAT.
So in these 28 incidents that DOD did go out, how many times was the Bearcat used?
The SWAT Bearcat?
Oh, I'm sorry. So these are, the explosive vehicle is totally different and that went out 28 times.
We don't have an EOD Bearcat.
So this would be a totally
This
new
is a
vehicle to our
for
arsenal.
EOD, correct. Right now, what they have is best described as a soft shell truck. So they're operating out of, I believe, an old crime scene van, which offers zero protection for the type of devices that they're evaluating.
And what is that? I imagine it has cameras that are connected to the robot. What's inside of that van?
Take it to Sergeant Byford.
Out of the van, yes, it's got a screen for us to view the robot that we're operating. Oh, I'm sorry, is it not on? Oh, my apologies.
Get up.
Okay, inside of the EOD response vehicle, yes, there's a television screen that is connected to the controls for the robot. There's also explosive storage magazines inside of there, as well as our our protective suit that we wear if we have to go down on a suspected IED. And there's also X-ray equipment and so forth that we keep inside of the truck.
I'm not sure. I apologize, Sergeant. This might be for you. Would you guys sort of explain to me what kind of gear you wear in some of these incidents? I guess both DOD and when we're issuing some warrants.
Sure. For EOD specific purposes, it's a huge giant bomb suit. You essentially look like a Ninja Turtle. You've got a giant helmet on and so forth. Like, that's what we wear for our stuff. For Sergeant Hill, I'll defer to him for his.
We're a little bit more slimmed down. Pants, shirt, and then a protective vest, as I was explaining earlier. Most of that vest is designed to stop pistol rounds. A small portion, a 10-inch by 12-inch portion at the front is designed to stop rifle rounds. A helmet, mostly for pistol rounds as well, or if there's an explosion or something to that effect to protect our heads. Protective eyewear, in case, protect our eyes. We wear headsets that protect our ears. In case there is a discharge of a firearm or something like that, we have protected ears. Those are essentially the main pieces of protective equipment that SWAT team wears.
Perfect. And to your knowledge, what kind of protective equipment against pistols and possibly 308 rounds?
Yes, 308, and there's a large category of, I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but for rifle rounds, there's so many different kinds of rifle rounds. I did bring some visuals of what these rounds look like if they'll help you.
Maybe. Remind me what protection civilians have from these rounds.
Well, your civilians are allowed to purchase different kinds of body armor, so civilians can purchase protection for this stuff as well. It's open market.
What kinds?
Can you specify your question, Counselor?
Sorry, what kinds of equipment is available for civilians that would protect them from these types of rounds?
You can purchase vehicles such as the MRAP. A private person can purchase them, or if you have the financial means for them. Is that what you're asking? What
Also
citizens have
vests.
access to?
Yeah, what equipment citizens have access to?
Depending on different state laws, what restrictions they have. Some states.
Specifically in New Mexico.
And I just want to clarify, I feel like we're putting you in a weird situation, asking you what can civilians buy when you're not a distributor.
Sure.
So I say as a state agency, a police state agency, public safety, you're not distributing or selling merchandise. So I think it's probably not fair for us to be asking you to name what civilians can purchase.
Perfect. Sorry. And I apologize to your knowledge. And we did hear that MRAPs, for example, the kinds of vehicles we're asking for are available on an open market. To your point earlier that it's not a military equipment.
To my knowledge, yes, all these products can be purchased if you have the financial means for them. Yes.
Okay, I do have a few more questions regarding, and this might be for Chief Joy. Chief Joy, were you aware of the Community Health and Safety Task Force that presented to us or not me, but presented to the governing body in September?
Madam Chair, Councilor Castro, I am.
And what was your relationship to that subcommittee?
I didn't have a relationship. I'm not.
You never presented or heard any presentations from them?
We did present periodically, but it wasn't a frequent. We didn't meet with them regularly. So it was as requested by the committee, we'd meet with them and do presentations.
Were you aware of any recommendations made by that committee?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
What might those be?
I don't have the full list of recommendations.
No worries. So I do have a recommendation here that was number 11. There was a ton of recommendations on that list. I'm just going to go ahead and read it really quickly. It says, recommendation number 11, ensure the non-militarization of the Santa Fe Police Department through the oversight by the city manager or the governing body of military style equipment and vehicles purchased or received through grants. Provide annual updates on equipment purchased that fall under the threshold of required approval from the governing body. To your knowledge, has there been any type of update to the governing body regarding this type of equipment?
I don't believe we've been requested to provide an update by the governing body.
Perfect. So I just want to point out, and this will be my last point.
So, Councilor, we do have oversight by the city manager and the governing body about the equipment that we purchase, and the equipment that we're asking for is not militarized equipment. These are not military vehicles. They're not militarized vehicles. These are armored police vehicles, specifically manufactured for the purpose that we're asking them for.
Have these vehicles ever been used, or is there any intent to use these vehicles for crowd control?
We have never used these vehicles for crowd control.
And there is no intent of using them for crowd control, correct?
We have very strict policies in place about how and when we can use these vehicles, including how do we use them for crowd control. But so far, and this vehicle is almost 20 years old that we have now, it has not been used as an element for crowd control.
Okay, just at special events.
Correct.
No further questions.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Faulkner.
So I just to recap a couple of things. So could you just, without disclosing too much information about your tactics, what happens to a crew that's in the rear of the house, like a team that's in the rear of the house, and there's no Bearcat available for them to shield from? And then a follow-up is, I would assume that these are also necessary because if the team that's on the ground that isn't behind the Bearcat, that's actually approaching the building, at some point, they may have to get cover because they're under heavy fire, correct? So then what would happen in that scenario where they're not a Bearcat there?
Thank you for your question, Counselor. To go to your first question, what happens to the units? They do the best they can, for lack of better words. They find whatever hardcover they can. Hardcover we classify as something that can stop bullets. Hopefully there's a cinder block wall or something very stout back there. Worst case scenario, they have to use their patrol vehicles and get behind those. As I presented earlier, everything else in our fleet, all our other vehicles, at best, some of them can stop pistol rounds. Some of them can't even stop that. They're not outfitted to stop that. So they're pretty much back there unprotected, aside from whatever they're wearing on their person.
And just to clarify again, what they're wearing on their person does not stop rifle rounds other than a small chest plate, but their head, their neck, their shoulders, their arms, their legs, their back, all soft targets, correct?
Out of maybe for demonstration purposes, maybe a 10x12 plate, smaller than this, a little more condensed than this. That's all that's protecting them in the back.
Okay.
If they were to encounter some sort of deadly force situation back there without the use or without the benefit of the equipment they need, hardcover armor, they may be in a position where they have to return fire and return deadly force. They may be justified to do so. The units in the front behind hardcover, they have the luxury of still being protected. They are not in what we refer to as an imminent threat of deadly force, even though they're being shot at. I know it sounds irregular, even though they're being shot at, because they're behind that hard armor, that still buys us the time we need to negotiate with that person inside of the residence to let them come down, say they're under the influence of alcohol or drugs or something like that. That gives them the time they need to come down from that and reason more with us to end the situation peacefully.
So the other question I have is with these older vehicles, I think I'm wondering technologically around communications. It seems to me that like these vehicles aren't just about protecting the team. They're also about getting communication to and from whoever is being served or where whatever the crisis is, as well as communicating with fire and other, like this is more, it's more like a mobile police unit rather than like a tank, for example.
That's an accurate way to put it. It has a full radio system in there, which from my understanding is close to being needing to be fully updated, all the wiring inside of it, but it is used as somewhat of a command center for the situation. As we talked about earlier as well, the long range acoustic device, that big speaker on the top, that's our most important piece of equipment. The first thing we do when we get on scene, lights and sirens, we want to let that person know we're here for this specific address. We're here for you. We have search and arrest warrant for you. These are your preliminary instructions on how we can end this peacefully. Without that, I would venture to say it puts us in liability if we do not announce ourselves as police. We do not have a safe way to do that, and a way to do that with that speaker system that's going to effectively communicate with whoever is inside of that residence so they know what's going on.
So I know you might have to speculate on this, but I'm counting that you're an expert, so I'm going to lean on you a little bit. Would you say that without these vehicles that what percentage of SWAT responses would end in the suspect being killed or officers getting killed?
It's, one of the issues that got up before the council, earlier, I believe it was the security one. This gentleman over here made a good point of it's hard to quantify what would have happened had security guards not been there. Likewise, it's hard to quantify and hard to qualify what would have happened had we not had this armor there. If you ask my personal opinion, and speculation to a degree, I have not a doubt in my mind that we have saved lives over the years. We tell all our SWAT officers all the time, we are in the life-saving business, not the life-taking business, contrary to what public perception makes us look. We are there to safely buy time, to protect the neighboring residences from whatever the potential threat might be, and put our crisis negotiating team in a safe position to where they can do their job, what they have training for, and reason with this person to strive towards a peaceful resolution.
Okay, so to be clear, your goal isn't to take out the suspect. It is to arrest them in as peaceful a manner as you can. And these vehicles help you do that so that everyone can walk away from that scene without being injured or killed.
That's accurate. I don't.
Point of order, because I mean, it's the police officer's duty to not go in and take out a suspect, right? That would be against your oath of office, correct?
Absolutely. We're here to serve the public. We are not, we're not military operators who are rules of engagement are to go in and take out the bad guy. That's simply not our job. Some of the equipment that we wear might look similar to what military uses or wears. Purposes of objects can be changed depending on what you use them for. Let's take the analogy of a knife, for example. A knife can be used to harm someone, right? But a knife can also be used for utilitarian purposes, for cooking purposes. You know, that doesn't mean that just because a bad person may have used a bladed object in a bad way, that knives altogether are deadly weapons. Similar, our Bearcat, it being compared to say an MRAT or a MATV, the armored vehicles that military uses. These, although they have some similarities, because just like military vehicles, they need to be able to stop rifle fire, heavy rifle fire. Their intention and their purpose behind them is different. It's to protect, not to go on the offensive.
Okay, and then I have one last question, and then a comment, Madam Chair. The question is this: I personally value the rights of our citizens to gather and to protest and to do what they need to do to be a part of the social contract that is the agreement between the citizens and the government. This is something that I think is critical. Could you go into how these, if you had to use these vehicles, what's the process that you would use these vehicles for when dealing with a crowd of protesters or people just gathering and it kind of gets out of control?
All right, Counselor, Sergeant Beal is the SWAT commander. He's not our ERT commander. That would be a different question. And I can certainly bring the ERT commander, but they have their own set of policies and requirements for interacting with First Amendment assemblies.
Point of inquiry, do they have access to these vehicles?
They do, but they don't operate the vehicles. It's their SWAT's vehicles.
Sorry, we might need that presentation at governing body then.
We can make him available for questioning as well, Sergeant Chavez.
Okay, and then the only other comment I would make is that we know, given that a lot of us are, and I'm not saying necessarily me, but a lot of leaders are interested in gun control, that the civilian population has access to an insurmountable level of weaponry that can be used and is used in deadly force, as we have seen. And so I would just say that you're facing a population possibly that is better armed than you are in some cases. And so that I would only offer that because that is a dynamic that is happening. And we all know it's happening because we're asking for gun control, so we can't say it isn't happening. That's one of the reasons that I will support this initiative, is because I know that you are often facing situations where you are outgunned. And just another question, how many of you have children and wives and partners, et cetera?
all members of my team have spouses, have wives. It's all male currently. We had a female, SWAT operator, about 1.5 years ago. She had a significant other, no children, but currently we all have families. The members on my team, we are very close together, 30 hours a month. They are family to me. I know them. I know they're not wives. Our wives exchange their numbers. They message each other when we're out and we're doing things that are dangerous to comfort each other. We're a very tight-knit group, and all I want is for them to be safe.
All right, thank you guys for your service.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Castro?
Quick question, sorry, there was a couple I missed. My understanding is that we have 135 officers in the Santa Fe Police Department. Is that correct, Chief Joy?
Counselor Castro, no, it should be 147 off the top of my head. So we're 169 fully staffed. We have 22 vacancies.
Perfect. And how many of those are SWAT officers?
We have vacancy for 19 SWAT members. Those include 4 tactical medics. That's the way they receive EMT training so they can provide first aid faster. They are considered SWAT members. So 19 SWAT members. We were fully staffed up until a few months ago. Some of our members hit, it's a big demand on an officer. It's generally an extra 40 hours of overtime a month. A lot of extra training they have to attend. Several of our SWAT officers hit the end of their tenure. They wanted to move on to do other things, and we're now having testing coming up soon to replace them with new officers. So currently we have 13.
13 members. Thank you, Sergeant. And how many of those members live in Santa Fe?
If I can have a minute just to do a quick count inside my head.
Of course.
Approximately 6 or 7, myself included.
Perfect. So one of my concerns is that we have been requested community policing by folks in this chamber. I have personally requested foot patrols in some of these areas, and I've been told that we don't have resources. I would like to make a motion that we actually just allocate the funds for one of these vehicles so that we can focus on training for some of our police officers. I would be willing to split the difference. And so I am going to make an motion to amend tonight to fund one vehicle and keep the rest of that funding in the Santa Fe Police Department.
Is the amendment posted?
No, so our direction from city attorney is that because it's not a law, we had to verbally make the amendment. We couldn't do it in writing. I don't know why, I'm sorry. And that's why I couldn't give it to you ahead of time, Chief Joy.
I think it's also important to note that the officers who are part of the SWAT team, that is not their primary function. Their primary function is patrol or investigations. And they do this as an additional task. And so this in no way, shape, or form takes away from the amount of foot patrols that they can or can't perform.
Awesome. So there's a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
I'll second it just for discussion purposes. Madam Chair, I may ask on the topic.
Yes. Are you done with your comments, Counselor Castro?
Yeah, sorry, I made a motion and
Okay.
you have a second.
Counselor Garcia?
Okay, so there's a proposal in front of us to fully fund one right now. On Monday, there was discussion in regards to trading in one of the vehicles or when we get a trade-in value, so to speak, on a purchase of another. Can you help me understand that process a little more with how that would work out?
Sure, Madam Chair, Counselor Garcia, and I'm going to be speaking a little out of school here because I wouldn't be able to say how much we would be able to get by turning in our current old Bearcat, but the plan is we submit that we turn the current one in to Lenco, and they can strip it for parts or do whatever that they're going to do, and then we would get a discounted rate for the vehicles that we're requesting to purchase. But I wouldn't be able to tell you how much we would get back or how that process would go.
Got it.
That is the plan.
Okay, so I guess my follow-up to that is the current vehicle usable? Because I'm looking at, if we were to purchase one, we would still have one, which would leave us with two, which is ultimately what's being requested right now. So how usable is the existing one to be used without having to purchase a second one? And could we figure out a different mechanism to protect the back, so to speak? And in lieu of the purchase of the second vehicle, which costs at it, I mean, was it 350,000, 400,000? What was the price tag of one of the Bearcats?
I don't have the thing in front of me. I think I'll go with whatever you.
Right. Well, and I don't quote me on that, but I thought I thought I had heard the number 700,000 for two. Because again, I want to make sure we're protecting you. That's the goal here, is how do we, not only for SWAT response, but in your daily activities. And I think that's, as I mentioned on Monday, some of my most concern is how do we provide all 130 some officers that are currently on active duty, all the tools they need to ensure that they are going to be going home at the end of the day. And I understand this particular proposal is to protect the SWAT team, which I'm fully supportive, but how do we also, in addition to that, provide the tools and resources to every single officer that's out there putting their life on the line to protect our community every day?
And Counselor, the importance of these vehicles is to protect all of our officers and hopefully remove them from having to engage in situations so that these gentlemen who operate on SWAT can take that lead. I was never on the SWAT team. I was patrol and all the other things back in my day, but there are a number of situations where I encountered that I'd be posted on a perimeter while these guys were doing the more dangerous work going in, and I was blocking traffic and doing all the other auxiliary stuff. To bounce around again, and I apologize, but if this were any other vehicle in our fleet, just by age alone, we would have removed it from service. My own personal car is about 10 years old. I can't imagine having a vehicle that I rely on for physical safety of myself and my partners that is pushing 20 years old. So we've done, we've kept it up, we've maintained it, we've done all the things and replaced the parts that we could to keep it functional. But I'm not trying to be scary with it, but I mean, we're as close to end of life with this thing as we can be.
I definitely understand that sentiment, and that brings about concern me in regards to if it's so aged and it's such a critically needed piece of equipment to y'all. We've had unanticipated GRT the last couple of years. It could have been worked into the budget. I think my question is why are we waiting until the last possible minute when there has been plenty of opportunity before to purchase and replace this one equipment?
I can tell you, Counselor, that we did try. We have tried over the years up to this point, and it's at various levels. It was kind of we'll wait until we really need it, and we'll wait until we really need it, and it's kind of a kicking the can down the road, so to speak. And so now we're at a point where we've been asking for these vehicles for a long time. We've been asking. We had the one. We have been asking for two for the reasons that have been explained, and we're at that point now.
But that the request hasn't come before the governing body. It's the administration who has denied it, not the governing body in the past. I want to make that crystal clear.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So, I think it's unacceptable that if especially in a line of work that you're in, if there's equipment that's old and has a potential for failure, that needs to be replaced. And I must say, I'm quite disappointed to hear that a request has been made in the past and it's been denied, because I'll just leave it there. So the last question I have for you, Chief Joy, is in regards to process and procedure. I know that Commander Vigil went over the kind of process, and then it gets sent up to you for final approval. And you had referenced some policies and procedures in regards to that might guide your process in approving or denying? Can you clarify, what are those policies and procedures that you use as a tool?
So we do have, the SWAT team has its own policy and procedures set up. What I do by the time it comes to me is I evaluate the matrix. I look over to make sure that the search warrants and the arrest warrants are in place and are valid. That the team who do the scouts have done the appropriate amount of homework to justify the residents that they're targeting, to make sure they're not hitting, and I say hitting, but going after the wrong place. I make sure that they've sufficiently justified the need with the person's history, who's the focal point. And if I have any questions, I rein it back down to the SWAT commander, and we have discussions about it as to whether or not it really makes, do we really need the SWAT team to execute these warrants? I don't know if I answered your question very well.
It did.
Okay.
And just for supplemental information, if we can get the copy not only to the governing body of the policies and procedures for the SWAT team, but included as the packages for the general public, I think unless it's violates any.
There are some operational sensitivities. I think
Okay.
there is a how do you say, like an edited version that's publicly available online of the policy.
That version, if that can be sent to us and included in the packet, I definitely understand the more confidential, integral part of your response integrity. So definitely don't need that out there. We want to make sure it keeps your team and your duty safe. But I think having information like that out there helps the public be comfortable, especially around equipment such as this. It's not been misused here in the city of Santa Fe, but there are other communities across the country where residents feel like it has been misused and intimidated for folks, and I don't want that to have, or any members of the public to have that impression. As Commander V. Hill mentioned earlier, that the job is to protect and save lives, and I want to make sure that the residents fully understand that, and because it can be quite scary when you see one of these vehicles. I mean, if I would encourage residents to see them, I mean, I've only seen them for response, not for another, and so I know the force that comes along with it. So I can see where some members of the public might have that sentiment. So with that, no other comments or questions. Thank you, Chief Joy, for asking.
And thank you, Counselor. I'm going to jump in with some comments and questions because I haven't had a chance to do that prior to the amendment. So I will get back to the committee after I make some comments. So I want to address a question, and these might just be comments. They might turn into a question. We'll see. It was asked how many days a year the vehicles would be used, or the vehicle has been used in the past. I would imagine, though, it needs to be ready to use 365 days a year. And so I want to just clarify or get some clarification with you. I think the matter of usage with a vehicle like this, which is a response to an emergency situation, we can't really determine the need based on how many times it has been used, because what's really hard about our public safety is you guys get a lot of criticism when you respond, but then you get a lot more criticism when you don't respond appropriately. It puts you guys in a very sensitive spot. I imagine there's a lot of public comment that has a lot to say about why these are needed. But then as soon as there's a situation that occurs that results in fatalities of citizens or even officers, the number one question is going to be, Chief Joy, why didn't you have the appropriate equipment to keep everyone safe? So to me, I want to hear from the experts on the front line, which are you. And if you say you need this to respond 365 days a year to keep citizens safe and yourself safe, I think that then it's needed. There might be a lot of criticism for a decision of that, but as soon as something occurs where you need it to save the day, they're going to ask why it wasn't there. And you guys are really in that spot often. you know, why are you responding too much? Oh, wait, why didn't they respond? And so really, you're going to make the decision you feel is best as the experts to keep our community safe and yourselves. I put trust in you because I know that if I'm in a situation, I want to be able to have confidence and depend on you to respond in the most appropriate way. So with that being said, I just wanted to clarify, the question should be, how often can this vehicle be utilized a year? 365 days a year, correct?
Yep.
Correct. That would be in all situations for the purpose of keeping our police officers and citizens safe in a very potentially dangerous situation, correct? And everyone here making the recommendation has experience in the fact that this is useful in those types of situations, correct?
That is correct.
All right, thank you. Those are the questions that are important to me. Because I know that that's what will happen. I think we've seen it before. There's a lot of, excuse me, questions about equipment you use, how you use the equipment, how you respond. But when someone's in a dangerous situation, they're going to wish that you had everything in your at your fingertips to keep them safe. Ultimately, that's what they're gonna wish. And if this is what's necessary, it's what's necessary. With the statistics you gave, the vehicles are being used more and more every single year. I imagine, just because crime in general is becoming more violent as time goes on, that it's going to protect more and more people with the magnitude of how crime is growing and how violent it is becoming. I think that if you say you need 2 vehicles to keep our community safe and to keep our officers safe, then it is something that we, and I'll say I think it's my responsibility to support you in that. So those are the comments. With the amendment, I will say right away that I will be unable to support the amendment. I don't think that it is promoting safety to say keep using a vehicle that you're ready, that's 20 years old, that could stop working at any time, and for just one new vehicle. If we have a situation that requires 2 vehicles to promote safety and one of them suddenly isn't working and our officers are in a vulnerable situation, it is completely inappropriate. The funds are there. This is what they feel is needed. This is what's being requested, and I feel it's appropriate that we support it. So those are my comments. Councillor Faulkner, did you want to chime in?
I would just echo the chair's comments. We constantly turn to staff and say, hey, tell us what you need. We want to help you. What do you need? And you are clearly telling us what you need. And so on my part, I will also not be supporting the amendment for the same reasons the chair mentioned. You are telling us explicitly what you need, and you've given us evidence that this is a request that is not beyond the pale and that will protect as many people as it possibly can. And so that's all I have, just echoing the chair's comments.
Thank you, Councillor Faulkner. Councillor Castro.
Yeah, I just have a couple final comments. I feel that it's really important that we listen to our community members and the committee that specifically told us that we need more friendly policing, that we need less militarized policing. So the fact that, Chief, you were able to comment to us that maybe the way we dress, especially in SWAT, needs to change is really amazing. And I think that we need to be looking at what our community members really are looking for out of policing. So I will, for one last time, just say everything that I can do to get foot patrols, I am here to support. Thank you.
And I just want to comment, I have a lot of comments today. I'm sorry. I want to comment on the Safety Task Force Committee. I would love for staff to bring forward how much our police department and fire department was involved in that committee. Because that is key data that has not been public. And it is very important that we listen to our community members, absolutely. But there is so much technicality and so much experience and work and understanding that the community members don't have that go into public safety. So when we're getting recommendations from the community, that is a perspective from the outside in. It does not include what those individuals' perspective are as they address the situations that they're in. I would love, because I know some of the facts around how much involvement our police and fire were involved in that committee. I will say there was minimal involvement. But I think it would be great for the public to be able to get that information. So I don't know if staff could bring that forward. In fact, I think some of our public safety members were not discouraged from being part of that committee for certain reasons, because of perspective of, I'll just say because of perspective. So it would have been a great and I think really productive conversation if both the outside and the inside involved in public safety, so the perspective of the public around public safety and public safety internally were both involved in the committee's work.
So-
I will say that based on what I know about the committee, that wasn't necessarily the case.
And just point of information, there was former firefighters on that committee.
So I would say though, that information shared in regards to public safety and getting data from the internal workings of both fire and police were very limited in discussions within that committee.
We've had a perfect example of that, Madam Chair, tonight, in the assumption that the public has that these are military vehicles that are what you would find in doing service in Iraq or in Afghanistan or any of the military things that we do. And it is clear that they are not. They don't have any weapons on them. They don't have the bomb resistance capacity. These are developed primarily to open communications and to protect officers as well as civilians. I can imagine a time where someone could be running out of a house and the only cover they could get is this vehicle. So I think that's a perfect example of what you're saying, Madam Chair, is that the reality is there's a lot of assumptions in the community, and I value community input at the highest possible level. But I don't think we're transparent enough with the community to provide the community with the education they need to have in order to understand what we're doing as a city. And so I would love that data as well.
And I don't want to get off subject, but I don't want to take away from the expertise on that committee. The expertise and the heart and the intention on that committee were great. I think I know a lot of those individuals, I work closely with them and they are wonderful. But I think there are a lot of biases present in our community around public safety. And as community leaders, we need to tackle those and overcome them and not ignite them further. And the way we do that is bringing close partnerships with community members and public safety individuals, not causing separation. And so great data that we got from that task force, but now we need to take that data and actually put it in real life with the people doing the work and going from there, which I don't think we've created that opportunity yet for. I think public safety has had to just respond to recommendations, which I think is incredibly unfair. What should really happen is those recommendations come forth and they give their perspective, they give their reality, and there's a conversation that's collaborative between community and public safety on how to actually address concerns. And that opportunity hasn't come. So maybe that's something you and I could partnership with, geez Louise.
I think they
That we could partner together on, and really take work that took a lot of time and effort and make it meaningful by involving the people on the front lines. So I just had to talk about that a little bit because I know that work had been mentioned. Councilor Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one quick question. Chief Joey, looking at our neighboring agencies, whether it's the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Department or the Rio Rancho Police Department, because Rio Rancho's little bigger in population than us. Santa Fe County provides support for us and the full county. How many Bearcats do each of those agencies have?
Councilor Garcia, I can't speak to Rio Rancho. I believe the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office only has one.
Okay. That's help. Okay, thank you.
On the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sergeant Wood corrected me that they have one Bearcat and they have the MRAP that we used to have, but we gave back for the 1033 program. So Rio Rancho has that as well.
Okay, thank you, Chief Joy.
And I think there was a call for, call the question. So we're voting on the, no?
We'll call the question required, but we can just go on the amendment.
We're gonna be voting on the amendment, okay?
Counselor Faulkner,
No.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Castro,
Yes.
Chair Chavez.
No.
I looked up, I knew this was gonna, or I thought this might happen, and I looked up Robert's Rules of Order here, and it says, the chair only votes in the case of a tie. And if that's the case, then this motion would pass.
No, because it wouldn't be a tie. It would be,
It wasn't a tie.
She would only vote in the event of a tie, so she wouldn't actually vote.
Don't have it.
from my understanding it, because it's a tie, it
Does
motion
not
does not
pass.
pass.
That's also my,
Oh, okay, okay.
No, Madam Chair, that is my understanding as well. I don't, even though the Robert's rules may say that about the chair vote, this committee, typically the chair does vote without regard to it being a tie. So
exactly.
in a tie situation, the vote fails.
Great, great.
Just
thank you.
wanted to put that out.
And I am not an attorney. I,
Know what?
No,
I
no, but
think
it-
that everyone understands it the same way, so that's great.
I think I do too.
No, I appreciate it. No, all the information is good. So the motion, okay, the motion does not pass. Is there any further discussion on the bar? Original? No? Okay, is there a motion? Is there a motion before? No, right?
You have
Oh, okay. Roll call.
Counselor Faulkner,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Chavez.
Garcia.
Excuse me,
Michael Garcia.
Michael Garcia.
Hey, it's been a long meeting.
I think it's my residual radio
Yes.
treatment stuff here. I'm sorry. Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Castro,
No.
Chair Chavez.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you.
Madam Chair, real quickly, I just want to thank my colleagues as well as the police for being here, because I think this was a much needed conversation, and I just appreciate the level of respect we had for each other and that we were willing to have this kind of debate.
I agree.
With decorum.
Thank you for that comment. Chief Joy team, thank you for being here. Appreciate the information. And we are going to move on. If I could log on to my computer, I think that we are at matters from staff though, correct? Okay, so are there any matters from staff? Thank you. Have a good evening.
I have no matters.
All right.
Been a long evening. Thank you, Madam Chair and counselors. Just a couple of quick announcements. Our after-school program at the Teen Center, registration is underway. It's a drop-in program, and we do have transportation, limited transportation, but we're able to make it available this year. So information is available on the Teen Center website. Our registration begins on the 12th. Also for our general after-school program, registration begins on the 12th. I'd like to invite you to an event hosted by the Mayor's Youth Advisory Board at the Teen Center on August 19th. It's tomorrow's Women Speak, and it's Israeli and Palestinian young change makers that are going to speak to us. And so that should be a really inspiring event. I hope you can make it. It's at 6 p.m. And then we have a back to school teen night at Bicentennial Pool on the 16th and a family night cornhole tournament, which should be super fun on August 23rd.
Wonderful. My son and his friend, well, they're 12. They're going to be 13 within the year, so they're allowed to go now, I guess. That's how it works.
12 we can do.
And they've been going and they love it. So,
Madam Chair, I did think of one item, please.
Well, it's
This
late.
reminded
I'm
me.
just
It'll
kidding.
take just a second.
okay,
Uh,
Director.
I want you all to notice the News of Zober sculpture out behind the convention center on Federal Place. It's 23 feet tall at the top of his finger, and it'll be there permanently to celebrate the 100th and to provide exposure to Zober on an everyday basis as opposed to the one day a year that we burn him. So we're really excited to have the sculpture back there.
Thank you for sharing.
Point of information, are you going to burn the sculpture?
We could heat it up, but it could not burn.
All right, great. And Director Tucker, that was it for you, right? Okay, Marcella? We're good.
Nothing.
All right, I think next is matters from the committee. Are there any matters from the committee?
So I have a very small condolence. We did lose a 10-year-old from Salazar in a car accident. So I just want to give my condolences to his family.
Yes, absolutely. That was a great loss. So condolences to his family and a quick healing process to his father that was also involved. If we could send our positivity and thoughts to them as they deal with the loss and a recovery. Next is from me, school starts on Friday and we are very prepared. So we're very excited for the first day of school. Everyone have a wonderful day. I actually love Facebook and social media or this time of year because of all the back to school photos. That's pretty amazing to see kids just kind of transform over the years. So I hope you all have a wonderful back to school. Be successful, work hard, parents. You'll make it through another school year, I promise. And our next meeting is going to be Wednesday, August 21st, 2024. Have a good night.